I think the fundamental issue in relation to gender diversity is that many organisations in many industries are missing out on great performance and great results and great benefits from having a diverse workforce, whether that's at the executive level or at the middle management level. You want to make sure that you're getting the best people in the best roles and that your organisation is capable of making strategic, creative, informed decisions, and that's only possible with a diversity of backgrounds and of skill sets and thinking and styles and experience.
I think that the two things we've seen out of the research is how people interact in part of that promotion process to get to leadership. So a lot of gentlemen, a lot of guys will actually be very forthright in what they want. They'll go very hard for it. They'll ask for the promotion. They'll be very, very driven by that. In the performance review processes, ladies tend to be a little different. They tend to want to be awarded it as part of doing a very good work. So there's a different dynamic in how it goes about. And I think because of that, it ends up becoming a lack of diversification, lack of gender diversity in leadership roles because of the way that dynamic's been allowed to sort of transform. Now, I think the hard metrics are sort of allowing people to say, well, with hard metrics in place, we need to address this. We need to address this on boards. We need to address this in senior leader roles. We need to address it through the organisation where people can grow into leaders as part of succession planning. But it's actually now started changing that dynamic and behaviour so that ladies themselves can actually have that opportunity because guys in the past have been too forthright to take those opportunities on. And it's just getting that balance right now inside companies.
There's the whole having a family and children, so sometimes you don't get that same level of opportunity to go for roles because they're seen as they're probably going to go in a couple of months because they're pregnant or something's going to happen, or they're at that age where they may have children. There's also unconscious favoritism towards a male, I feel. I don't think they do it consciously, but there is that, little bit more of a chuff and respect that you would get from a male.
I've always been very lucky. I have spent the last decade in the recruitment industry and the bulk of that working for TRC, where there's very little in the way of gender inequality. So there's always been equal opportunity to progress. And I know that not everyone has that luxury, but just thinking back on some of the biggest lessons that I've learnt and challenges that I've had in taking that leadership path, I think is recognising that you need to step out of your comfort zone and often, and when things start to feel particularly uncomfortable, to recognise that that's inevitably when you're learning the most and creating step change in your career. I think for female leaders, leading with authenticity is really important. There's a lot to be said for that, a lot of power in that. Don't be afraid to be yourself and to own it. There's a reason that you're on the path to leadership. And I think authenticity goes a long way in eliciting the right responses out of people. And also for us as women, just bringing that level of mindfulness and empathy into leadership practices in terms of talking about good leadership and building good culture. I think that's definitely a strength that we have in changing the face of leadership.
We know that there's two really fundamental problems that are creating barriers and biases for women assuming and for organisations to benefit from their executive leadership experience. And the first is in relation to workplace practices and policies. And they're what we refer to as the structural things. They're the impediments that make and create barriers for women. So they're often around flexible workplaces, about flexible return to work policies, and then about the culture that underpins that. And that's the second factor. So there's very often a big disconnect between the practices that an organisation says that they espouse and they want to promote and those cultural things that can create biases. So they're often the said, but more often than not the unsaid things that are creating often unintentional and accidental bias, but they're certainly evident when you have a look at the executive ranks.
I guess it's your attitude. You will get, every now and again, you'll get some aspect of sexism, if you like, and you just got to rub it off and go, they're an idiot. And, you know, it's your attitude. You work hard. You prove that you've got the stuff. And then they slowly become to respect you, and they turn and they understand, right? I think there's always will be a nature of, you know, if it's two male leaders, particularly from two different companies, you know, they will probably have a better relationship than a male to female, and a female does need to work at it. And it is sometimes a fine line, right? Sometimes it's a travelling on a fine line, but you just have to be professional, work hard, prove that you can do it, yeah.
I mean, there's lots and lots of reasons why we don't have women represented the way they should be in senior leadership and decision-making roles, including political roles. Some of that's to do with the feeder pool, some of that's to do with caring responsibilities, so women's careers being sort of derailed once they have children. And then a lot of that's to do with organisational culture and the prototype for what a leader looks like. So people naturally impose their blueprint for what success looks like, and for the last 200 years since the workplace was invented, success has looked like an Anglo-Saxon or Anglo-Celtic male, heterosexual male, who is of a certain age and behaves in a certain way, in typical masculine ways. And without meaning to impose that blueprint, that's become the decision-making entity for what success looks like in leadership. And women being different naturally don't fit that. So that's another reason. So it's those invisible factors that prevent women from seeing themselves or envisaging themselves as leaders. There's a caring factor, there's the feeder pool. And I think there is also outright discrimination against women. The view that there are certain professions, or that women aren't capable of making tough decisions, that they're not capable of being part of the boys' club, of having hyper-masculinised behaviour. What we're doing by changing the nature of leadership is challenging the status quo, and people who benefit under the status quo are usually reluctant to change their behaviour because there's nothing really in it for them except maybe a loss of power. And what we know about human nature is that there are some people who that's not appealing to them at all, and it threatens the way they view themselves in society. So the other thing that's helpful in terms of creating more gender-balanced workplaces and gender-balanced leadership is to have an approach that does not directly and openly threaten and intimidate. So to have a win-win situation where people can understand the business benefits of diversity so that they will willingly engage in it.